Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second session. In this session, we'll focus on indoor mapping and mapping of remote areas. Our first speakers are from SNCF, the French railway company, and they will talk to us about indoor mapping of French railway stations. An applause, please.
Hello everyone, I'm Cynthia Gutton. I'm the head of a digital innovation team at SNCF Transilien. And this is Vincent Génin. He's a project manager for all open data projects. And he followed Florian Lenez, who may be here, and worked also a lot on this project. So we're very happy to be here, and we're here to talk about why we chose OpenStreetMap for indoor mapping and how we did it and what kind of issues did we face. So just to give you a few indications about who we are. So SNCF is the national railway company that runs all transport by train across France. And Transilien is the company within the company that runs transport across Paris area. So mainly in Paris suburbs. And we share it with another company that runs the tubes in Paris. So to give you a few figures, Transilien in Paris area, we have like 3.2 million travelers every day. 70% of them are regular, they commute every day. So to give you a comparison, it's like if there was an Airbus 380 taking off every 6 seconds. So it's really a lot of people, and especially on peak time, it's quite crowded. It's maybe in most cities, I guess. Some more figures. So we have 14 train lines across Paris area. We also have 47 night buses. We have 6,000 trains commuting every day as well, and 388 stations. So it's quite a lot of stations, and they are spread across all the territory. So welcome everyone. So but just to say that it's really mass transit, and we call it mass transit, and mass transit is really a challenge. It's a challenge about having trains organized efficiently, and it's also a challenge about services. Services is what we offer to customers to have the right information, how we secure their safety, how we make their travel smooth, when basically it's not always smooth. So to do that, to challenge this objective we have to create services that make traveling easier, Transilien chose 4 years ago to have an open innovation approach and use users, partners, developers, data scientists to help us to imagine and create new services. So that's how we started the open innovation process. The first example is open data. So we started it 4 years ago, 2012. And we have, for instance, the GTFS timetable, which is the most used. We also have real-time schedule with an API. And all in all, SNCF now has 80 datasets open. So this is the screen of the website, data.sncf.com, where you can find everything, including the OpenStreetMap data. Within the open innovation process, we also organized a few events to get to know the community, and so that the communities get to know us. So back in 2012, we did our first hackathon. It was quite the first try. So that's where we started creating a service called Tranquilien, which is a collaborating service where all customers can tell how crowded is the train in their carriage. And then in 2013, we did another one about accessibility, how we can create new services for disabled people. And that's where we realized we needed data about our stations, like the stairs, elevators, where are the entrances, etc. That's where we started the OpenStreetMap adventure in 2013, because we needed open data about the geographical data of our stations. So we started the mapping parties with OpenStreetMap contributors in France. And then we did other challenges in 2015 about tourism. Another example of the open innovation approach is our application. There has been a new release in July, and the application is clearly dedicated and made by customers, since all customers, all users, can suggest new ideas, and they can vote for suggested ideas, and regularly we decide the roadmap integrating the services that has been suggested by users. So now I'm going to focus a bit more on OpenStreetMap. Now you know us better. So how did we choose to use OpenStreetMap? So I told you that one day when we started really focusing on accessibility, we realized we didn't have so many data geolocalized to create services like maps, itineraries. And when it came to this kind of data, we chose OpenStreetMap for different reasons. The first one is, as you probably understood, that we saw it as a powerful source for open innovation, because OpenStreetMap has a large community of contributors, of developers. And for us, it was like a large amount of data we could publish. The second thing is that as a public company, we have this culture of contributing to commons. And for us, having people using the open data is a way to create new services for transport and to do the promotion of public transport also in France. The third thing is, it's a challenge, is that we thought that maybe using OpenStreetMap means using a database which is alive with a community that contributes, and that maybe it would help us to keep up to date these data. With 388 stations, it's really a challenge to keep the data up to date, even with contributors inside the company. So we thought, why not having all the data open and enabling people to contribute? And the fourth thing, which is really important for us, is that OpenStreetMap framework is open, the data is open, and it's easily shareable with other companies. And especially as we are in the Paris area, we work together with another company, RATP, that runs transport in Paris. We are under the supervision of the regional council, which is called STIF. So we need basically to work together all the time, and we need to share the same data and speak the same language, because we have lots of services that are really common. And that's why we couldn't work on data which are closed and cannot be really shared with others. So that's really a key thing that is dependent on the fact that we work together on an area. So now Vincent is going to explain you how we did it, which is a challenge also.
So I will be more on the practical side. How did we do it? And I will keep the thing a bit simple, because everything more complex on indoor mapping will be shared by Cartocité on the next talk, and they will talk about how they did it in specific ways. So we started in 2013 when Cynthia explained it. We needed data about accessibility, and we did a small mapping parties in 30 of our stations, and a lot of people during the hackathon were very, very interested by the data. Some people were long-time OSM contributors, but some new ones were very interested because the data was very, very useful. And so we decided to take it seriously, and we hired 15 people, students interested by OpenStreetMap, and we paid them to go to our 388 stations. They were formed by OSM France, a little formation, and they were supervised by us. And we sent them in all the region. It took us something like 2 or 3 months, because they were not available all the time. And after that, we had a lot of data on the Paris region. But we wanted to use it. We wanted to be more thorough, more perfect. And we choose 80 stations that we sent other contractors at Cartocité and ArcSci to go to these very complex stations, because we had multi-level stations. We had very complex indoor mapping in big stations. So the small one, when this is just a platform and a stop, we thought it will be okay. But the very complex one and the indoor mapping, it demands a lot of technical knowledge. Then when the clients had to pass his tickets, so we used turnstile. It existed, but we use it for another way. It was not public park turnstile. And sometimes we created new elements, new features, like train station entrance to mimic subway station entrance, because we wanted to do some more specific use of the data. But we documented everything on the wiki, and we nearly created nothing. We just put all the existing part, all the existing proposition, all the existing documented features just in one part to map extensively our indoor stations. The process of collecting the data, it was kind of a classical one. If you ever did some indoor mapping and micro mapping, we sent people with field papers in the stations, and they took photos and they took a lot of notes. And we sometimes, when we had them, we gave them plans, but we had not plans for every of our stations. And we collected something like 15,000 photos, and a lot of them are in 360 degrees in our station. Right now, we don't use it externally, but we will talk about it maybe at the end, but we have a lot of photos to use also. And the people just use OSM, and they mapped everything just by hand. But Cartocité will talk about extensively about the mapping process. So today, do you want to talk about it, or? Today, so we have our 388 stations mapped with a lot of data. We have more than 47,000 elements, so it's very diverse. It comes, there is 30 features, 30 big features, and it's entrance of the train station, it's the buildings, it's the platform, it's elevators. We even mapped benches and clocks and information screen and terminals. We mapped shops, of course, but we also mapped every ticket validator, a lot of ticket validator. And right now, we're not really sure about we can be the reference for all the SNCF about our data, but for the 80 stations that we map thoroughly, we are very, very confident, and we think that the quality is nearly perfect. So yeah, we mapped a little bit of our outdoors because we needed parkings, we needed taxi, we needed some other things to show to the client. So that's one of an example of a render of our map. This is a style sheet made by the SNCF for the SNCF purpose. And this kind of style sheet is used, we will show it after, but in the Transilien application, the official one. And we use just OSM data coupled with buses stop from another source. But for the building and everything you can see, it's just OSM data. And you can see on the photos, but there is metadata also on a lot of the on the elements.
So now we have the data. We worked on creating services for customer. So lots of people outside the company are probably creating services with the data. So are we. So the first thing is creating a map so that customer can orient it in the station and can also have access to all the information and new services. So for the moment, it's mainly a map that is in Transilien application now. It has been made by Jog, which is there. So you probably will talk about it later, about how you did it. That's the first step. What we are thinking of is how we can use the map, not only to be a map for people who get lost, because we have 70% of customers who are regular. So basically, I think they know their station. So we really want to think about how the map can integrate new services and be the basic for a new access to information and not just a map. So basically, in this map, you can a customer can check the station. They can change level. They can select services. The second thing is that's an idea we had already years ago. Is that how can we enable everyone to contribute to the data? OpenStreetMap is great, but it's not easy for everyone to create data or modify the data. And as I said before, one of our objectives is that the data is alive and is being updated all the time. And we have in our station, we have about 20,000 people working in the station or in the offices, and we thought it's a great resource to keep up-to-date the data. So we created this app. The goal is to make it very easy for everyone to contribute, so to create a new point, to move an object, to give more information about a shop, for instance. This application is being built at the moment. It will be probably finished by the end of the year. And the challenge after is to make it used by people. So for the moment, we want to dedicate it to the people in the stations. And then we'll see how we can open it to a broader community. But it gives a few challenges.
Enriching the map existing in our application with new services, it's one of our projects. The professional application to keep the data up to date is another of a project, but we have a lot of other ideas, and the big project right now that are being developed in SNCF are we are creating a tile server just for SNCF services, because when we started 4 years ago to work with OpenStreetMap, it was not very well used inside of the SNCF. But right now, inside for very specific application, but when a service has to map something, a lot of time you use OpenStreetMap, at least the tiles and not maybe the real data, but just as a map. And but there is a lot of maps, and people are using the official tiles a lot. And we think it will be better for the SNCF to create his own tile server to release some pressure from the community. And so we're working on it, and it's live, but it's not industrialized inside the SNCF. It's not well used right now, but we think that at the end of the year or beginning of the next year, it will be more developed. We also working in Transilien for pushing the information of OpenStreetMap in our GIS. Right now, we don't have a real GIS in Transilien. They are creating it, and so we are working with them to make them use the more of the information they can from OpenStreetMap. It's not an easy process, right? Really, because the people managing the equipment and the official GIS of the SNCF, the open mentality is not very shared, and it's a kind of a fight of every. So, but we're working on it, so we can't promise anything. But I think it could be very, very, very important for the SNCF to use this kind of data. Come on. And we also working on putting real-time data on our maps in our application. At the end of the year or beginning of the next year, we will be able to show the state of the elevators, if an elevator is working or not working. So we are plugging the inside API of the SNCF to OSM data.
I know time is over. I just want to conclude in one sentence. 2 sentences. Now we have a few challenges. The first thing is we would really like to know what can help the community to work on the data and use it. We're really willing to know what kind of use is made with the data. And one of the challenge, which is also more internal, as Vincent said, is that the question we face now is how do we mix this external source of data with internal data. We really want to merge it to have like a unique source of data. But in companies like SNCF, we need to have some data which are really controlled, and we want to be sure about where it is, its characteristics, and that's really one of the challenges to go further. But that's really something which is moving on the right direction in the company, and we think it's really promising for the future.
Any questions? Please wait for the microphone.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I just have one more or less related question. Is SNCF considering deploying an indoor location system, or do you actually think that that would make any sense to support this kind of application?
That's something we are looking at, indeed, to add new services in the map, and especially location or even routing indoor. We still haven't really measured what kind of efforts we need to do it, and I think we'll probably need to still to compare what are the benefits for the user versus the cost. We know some other solutions already do it, not always that so well, but they do it and they're going to do it better. So yeah, we are looking at it, but we don't have the project yet.
A question concerning your applications. Are any of them open source, or are they all closed source?
In the application Transilien, it's not open source. It's not the same for MapMagar, which is the application for to contribute. It's not completely open source.
Hi, that was very interesting. So it's often difficult to convince, back here in the back, it's often difficult to convince big organizations or government agencies to use open data and OpenStreetMap. How did you convince your supervisors or other parts of the agency to do it?
I think we did it a bit in a sneaky way because we did it step by step. So that's a bit the way we usually work for digital innovation. We try to prove things and then to have agreements to go further. So at the beginning we started for a hackathon about accessibility. So as we didn't have any data geolocalized inside the company, we needed to create them. So that's how we started with OpenStreetMap. But it was still at a small scale. And then it worked. We saw at the hackathon that lots of teams worked on it and they created new services with it. And like for instance, now we are really industrializing an application for disabled people that use the maps and the data. So it's really a proof that it's a fuel for new services. And so after that, we decided to have the data for all the stations because nobody's going to use it if we just have one line. So that's how we did it. And step by step after we thought, okay, we are doing map, but the maps of the last station, they're not that good. So we decided to improve them. So we went step by step. And now we're really at a stage when the issue is, shall we use this database for lots, for not everything, but 80% of the services, or shall we keep it on one side, and inside the company we keep having our internal system? And that's really the issue we face now. So we have a few answers, but yeah, now we are at a step point again. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe next year we can tell you about it.
Sorry, just to continue, I think one of the questions also for the SNCF is very practical. It's Google Maps. It exists. It's very easy for company to use it, and usually a lot of big companies use it. And how do you convince a big company to use something like that compared to Google Maps and their API? One of the main things is you saw the map with the SNCF style sheet. It's with multi-level. You can't create this level with Google Maps. It's just one map, and you can't show anything Google don't want to show, and usually it's just shops. So in Transilien, we wanted to show services, and we want to add new services, and we want to show a lot of things, and it's just possible with this kind of data, this kind of map. So it's very important to convince people inside that you can modify and you can think about new services and add new services to maps. It's not just an easy way because you have to develop it. It takes time, it takes money sometimes, usually. But you can imagine new things. You can't do that with Google.
One last question.
So I think I have the mic, so it may be me. Thank you for that answer. It partially answers the question that I have for you. And the question is, what was your initial motivation for doing this work? It's clear now that you're finding applications, but somebody somewhere had an idea and a motivation to do something different. And the reason I'm interested in your answer is because I am certainly in this situation, and maybe others here too, in which we are always trying to balance the push of a supply for something and the balance with generating demand. And in this case, I think that's what you all have gone through too. So to repeat the question, what was your motivation for engaging in something new that no one else had yet identified as a problem to address?
I think my answer will be quite the same as my answer to your question. We didn't have a precise goal at the beginning. Well, we have the small goal, which was how can we give data to developers to create services for disabled people. And then we saw other uses, and then we had a new objective. And step by step, we had new objective, and we saw new way to value the data inside our as a service for the customers. And we are still seeing new things. So we didn't have like a vision before. And I remember we met RATP, which is the other operator in Paris. I think it was in 2014. So we had 1 year of experience with OpenStreetMap. And they asked us, yeah, we are looking at doing it, but how do you value that? And I couldn't really answer to this question because we valued it. Well, we created new services at the beginning, but small services, and we didn't have yet the vision. But I think it's also how it works sometimes with innovation. It's you don't know where you're going, but you see new things as you move on.
Okay, we're unfortunately running out of time. If you have any more questions for the speakers, feel free to ask them during the lunch break. Let's thank our speakers again for their contribution.
Thank you.